Hi, I'm Calvin Rothi, and today I'm going to talk about the movie 7 Years in Tibet and focus on both the religious ideas presented in the movie, but also the greater geopolitical conflict that creates the foundation for the movie. Let's start with a rundown of the movie for those who haven't seen it. The movie is based on a true story and features the main character Heinrich Harrer, who is an Austrian mountaineer. After failing at climbing Mount Everest, he and his team were taken as POWs as the Second World War had just begun. After escaping, him and Peter Oschweiler, fellow German mountaineer, march their way from village to village in the Himalayas. They eventually settle in Lhasa, the capital city of Tibet. They stay there for 7 years while the war rages on and have two very different experiences in the new culture. Peter has an easy time assimilating, even learning to speak the language and marrying a Tibetan woman. Heinrich is more resistant to the new cultural practices, on the other hand, but befriends the Dalai Lama, and while constructing a theater for him, they have many conversations around things that fascinate the Dalai Lama. By the end, Heinrich gets to return to his homeland and leave Tibet a richer, more enlightened person. One thing that this movie does really well is its portrayal of the Dalai Lama, who is the religious leader in Buddhism. It's a life appointment, as Buddhists believe that when the Dalai Lama dies, he gets reincarnated as a boy, who then immediately takes over responsibilities with guidance from older monks. So even though this movie takes place 75 years ago, it is portraying the current Dalai Lama. He's portrayed as being very curious and always looking for something to learn, which based on interviews he has done, this is incredibly accurate. And in many ways today, you can still see that whimsical boy in him. The Dalai Lama is an incredibly important spiritual leader for all Buddhists, but also the political leader of the Tibetan people. And the movie does a good job showing both his dedication to the people and their religious beliefs. This is best evident in the scene when the Chinese generals come to meet with him, and even through their immense disrespect, he shows them the utmost respect and hospitality, all while standing up for his people. The movie as a whole also does a good job relaying some core religious ideals of Buddhism, like when Heinrich is told that a friend's good fortune is a blessing. Though he resents their relationship, a Buddhist, on the other hand, would be very happy for them, as they don't see themselves in competition with each other, like Heinrich does. I think there are a lot of good scenes in terms of religious messages, but there's no better scene than when Heinrich is digging the foundation for the theater. He had employed several local Tibetans to help, and while digging, they felt incredibly guilty for hurting the worms in the earth, and they no longer wanted to continue building because Buddhists believe in reincarnation, and they believe that the worm was somebody's mother in a past life and they should treat it with respect. Heinrich ends up finding a solution, but at its core, this scene conveys the ideal of pacifism and care for all life that means so much to Buddhists. The whole movie does a great job with this, especially when the Tibetan people are face to face with violence, and does a really good job incorporating Buddhist religious ideals based on how the Tibetans are portrayed, and specifically the Dalai Lama. The end of the movie touches on the conflict between communist China and Tibet. For context, Tibet is a region of northwest and western China. It's a very large region, in fact. Tibet operates as its own state before the invasion of China in the late 40s and 50s, which resulted in the deaths of 1.2 million Tibetans. This forced the Dalai Lama to flee, taking refuge in India to this day, and at least 145 Tibetans have self-immolated, which is setting themselves on fire in protest. It is incredibly tragic, and unfortunately, it doesn't end there. In Buddhism, there's the Dalai Lama, which we have been talking about, but there's also the Panchen Lama, who's responsible for picking the next Dalai Lama. So when the Dalai Lama dies, the Panchen Lama goes out and finds who he's been reincarnated into, and vice versa. It's an incredibly sacred and important role. The Chinese government had kidnapped and installed their own Panchen Lama, and with the Dalai Lama's old age, this poses a big problem, as people fear the next Dalai Lama might not be found because of China's interference. It is incredibly sad and happening right now, and it really exemplifies how devout the Dalai Lama and all Buddhists are, as in this time of crisis, the Dalai Lama won't say a negative thing about China or call for any retaliation, because he doesn't believe in that as a Buddhist. It's a core concept of Buddhism, and it's good to see a religious figure walking the walk, so to speak. 7 Years in Tibet is a film at the end of the day, but it goes a long way to expose Western audiences with ideas present in Eastern religions, specifically Buddhism. These include the ideas that all life is sacred and shall not be harmed, mindfulness, pacifism, and much more, all of which are heavily present in the movie, and through the actions of the Tibetans and the Dalai Lama, who is the leader through his own actions. And that's something I think we can all get behind regardless of religious beliefs. Thank you.